Even though America is very divided politically and red state people tend to hate blue state people, I guess vice versa, that doesn't mean Kentuckians wouldn't enjoy gourmet coffee. Maybe it's not, as Bev would say, their jam, but why assume they wouldn't be interested? Good taste is good taste, and Spark Plug coffee tastes great. They're great. That's because Spark Plug uses premium quality beans that'll help you whip up the most sensational cup of joe you've ever had. Spark Plug will deliver to your door, you Canadians, and of course Americans, and that delivery cost is nothing in Canada. Zero. We don't have to pay a cent to get it sent. That's the epitome of convenience, yet this stuff is also affordable. This arrangement is better than paying for takeout every single day. Since you're busy, and most of us are busy, maybe you're taking care of 7 or 8 brothers and sisters, you should sign up for the Autopilot Coffee Club. Pause your membership if you're going to be on the road for a few months performing, or cancel if you just can't keep buying it anymore. But give it a try, because we're very confident that you're going to want to keep the flow of good beans coming without interruption. The website is sparkplug.coffee/HYES. Those last 4 letters represent our promo code, so throw HYES into the right box and save 20%. One time only, though. Find your new favorite, you sons and daughters of coal miners or of whatever job your dad had, or your mom. Well, this is the last Friday show I'm going to be posting for a few months, so let's get to it right now, and action! Have you ever seen Coal Miner's Daughter? Hello, good peoples, and welcome to the 671st episode of Have You Ever Seen? We analyze motion pictures of the classic kind on this channel, and we ladle out liberal amounts of spoilers. I'm your solo host for this Friday podcasting extravaganza, Ryan. I was raised in the country, but I've never been in a hollow, Ellis. My lovely wife Bev isn't here for this episode, and she won't be here on Monday either. She doesn't podcast on Fridays anyway, and as for Monday, that's just our typical 1 week off per month thing we do, most of the time. We didn't for a little while this year, but we have been for a while now. But even though you won't get the female perspective for the next 2 shows, Ladies Month does continue on our channel, with us spending June reviewing films that feature women in the leading roles. We've had Sense and Sensibility and the documentary Amy so far, with Born Yesterday being the movie in question 3 days from now. But as for today's topic, it's about a girl from Butcher Holler, and it was released by Universal Pictures 45 years ago on March 7th, 1980. It was well received, raking in $67 million. In 1980 money, too. I found something online where you can adjust numbers for inflation, and if I did it right, this flick's adjusted total would be something like 267 million buckaroos. Wow! CMD started out strong by opening number 1 at the box office that March, and it ended up 7th at the domestic box for that entire year. The Empire Strikes Back was easily number 1, while 9 to 5 was 2nd, and the Best Picture winning Ordinary People was 11th. We've covered all 3 of those motion pictures. In fact, 9 to 5 was posted on this channel just about a month and a half ago. To give a very brief plot outline, Michael Apted directs a Thomas Rickman screenplay, and Tom adapted Loretta Lynn's autobiography. Sissy Spacek plays Loretta, and Tommy Lee Jones plays her husband Doolittle. Lynn, that's his name. Her maiden name was Webb. She has a very humble upbringing in Kentucky with her, 7 brothers and sisters? You know what her dad does for a living. But she can sing and eventually becomes a giant country star. Doo is her biggest fan and manager for a little while, too, even though their marriage is often tempestuous, tumultuous, a tumult. Beverly D'Angelo has a key role also as fellow country legend Patsy Cline, who for a good chunk of the running time is Loretta's best friend. Or, in a nutshell, hillbillies be singing. Although it's funny I use that word here, hillbillies, trying to make you maybe smile or laugh, because I didn't think of them that way while watching the film or preparing my notes. But then I read that word and some of the stuff I found online afterwards. They are hillbillies, I guess, but they're far from the guys we see in Deliverance. You hear somebody say that word and you think about fear, aggression, violence, and ignorance, and a lot of missing teeth that helps them leer. That's not what Apted is showing us at all in this film. They're poor and Loretta's very naive about the world once she leaves the holler. But I think I could be friends with the people who are portrayed in this biopic. All of them, not just the main stars like Loretta and Doo. They seem like nice folks. And look at the talent. Loretta wasn't even the only famous singer to come out of this family. But I'll get into that in a little bit. The daughter has solid figures on Rotten Tomatoes, with 84% fresh reviews from the critics. It's at 86% on the popcorn meter. 53 critics have said it's a good watch, while 10 have put their rotten thumbs down. Roger Ebert had it 8th on his top 10 list that year, while Gene Siskel ranked it way up at number 3. For Michael Apted, the Val Kilmer flick Thunderheart is his highest rated big screen film. It's at 91% on the tomatoes. That surprised me. Did it surprise you? Not that it sucks, I haven't seen it in a long time, but that's a higher rating than I ever would have expected from Thunderheart. Coal Miner's 84% is right in line with another biographical film about a famous woman that he directed, Diane Fossey in Gorillas in the Mist. And of course, Michael directed the Up series on television, which the Tomatoes rates very highly, I think the highest of all of his things, and it's also probably the thing he's best known for. That 84% is a respectable number, but the 3 Spacek films that we've reviewed before today, Badlands, The Straight Story, and Carrie, do a lot better on Rotten Tomatoes than this does. This is right in line with JFK, though. She and Tommy Lee Jones were both in that, even though they don't really share a scene together. They're both in the courtroom at the end of the movie for several scenes. Yeah, okay, but I don't think they ever interact. And as for Jones, 3 flicks of his we've covered in the past, The Fugitive, No Country for Old Men, and Men in Black, all rate higher, quite a bit higher in fact, than this does. In 2019, Coal Miners joined the coterie of motion pictures in the National Film Registry, along with 3 others that we've discussed, which were Amadeus, Clerks, and Platoon. We haven't reviewed The Last Waltz or Purple Rain, but those fellow music movies went in that year too, and Purple Rain has that classic Prince music, while The Last Waltz just happens to be one of my very favorite music documentaries of all time, and they're one of my 3 or 4 favorite bands too. CMD won an Oscar, Sissy Spacek for Best Actress. She beat out Ellen Burstyn, Goldie Hawn, Mary Tyler Moore, and Jenna Rollins. Burstyn had won her own Best Actress trophy for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, a Scorsese movie, 6 years earlier, and Goldie won for Best Supporting Actress a decade before this movie came out, but Mary Tyler Moore and Jenna Rollins never did win, although the Academy did give Rollins an honorary Oscar in 2016, so that was a pretty nice make-good. The other Coalminer's Daughter nominations were for Best Picture, Thomas Rickman's adapted screenplay, Arthur Schmidt's editing, Ralph Bode, I'm guessing it's Bode, his cinematography, plus the sound by Portman, Heyman, H-E-M-A-N, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and Alexander, those are all last names, of course, and the art direction, set decoration by Corso and Dwyer, 2 more last names only. Not only was Loretta Lynn there in the audience on Oscar night to see Sissy win, smiling huge during our girl's Oscar speech, but so was Jake LaMotta, when De Niro won for Raging Bull. In the history of the Oscars, actors have often won the award for playing real people, but generally that happens in period films, and the person they played is long dead. Think of more recent history with Danny Day-Lewis. Danny! I'm going to call him Danny for at least this one sentence. He played Lincoln. Colin Firth played King George the Sixth? I think it's the 6th. I wrote down 6th. And Meryl Streep playing Margaret Thatcher. That was all in a couple of years there, too, in fact. So there had to be a lot of pressure on Spacek to get it right when she's playing a very famous country star who was still around to see if she messed it up and wasn't even that old either. She wasn't like she was 80 and they thought, oh, she can't figure this stuff out. She was still pretty sharp. But it helped, too, that Loretta wanted Sissy to play her in the first place. She pretty much handpicked her. Michael Apted was passed over for his direction, even though he was up for the Directors Guild Award. The man who lived to be nearly 80, and he has since died, a couple years ago, I guess it was never nominated for an Oscar, in fact. It was a great group of guys who were up for it that year, though. So while Mike maybe felt slighted, and I guess probably should have, it would be hard to be mad at this group. Marty Scorsese for Raging Bull, David Lynch for The Elephant Man, Roman Polanski for Tess, Richard Rush for The Stuntman, and the guy who won Best Director, Robert Redford for his debut film, Ordinary People. Tess isn't Polanski's best work, so maybe Apted should have slipped into the 5 instead of him, but Rush's movie is pretty terrific, and you can't really argue with Marty, David, or Bob. Bub. AFI-wise, Coalminer's Daughter made the Top 100 Cheers list. It ranks 70th on the American Film Institute's Top 100 Most Inspiring Films. And the title tune was up for the Top 100 Songs, but Coalminer's Daughter did not make that list. Okay, well, those are the plaudits and awards and all that stuff. Let's dig into the story. Oh, and just to set the scene, it's 1945. We're in the hills in Kentucky. World War II is ending, maybe just ended. Loretta's only 13 years old, and she's one of 8 kids, although her folks would have even more kids in the years ahead. That bed and butcher holler saw some serious bumping over the years. Spacek and Jones share above the title billing, which makes sense. It is a movie about the 2 of them, not just her. And this starts off reminding me of a film I recently covered, National Velvet. What is that, velvet? That's beautiful. With our teenaged main character on a horse. Well, we also see her dad doing the coal mining thing. That was not a part of National Velvet, the coal mining thing. She's going to see Pops as he ends his day of work, and Loretta Lynn is outside the mine too, wearing his army uniform, standing in his jeep and rabble-rousing almost all the miners, except Ted. Mr. Webb's rabble cannot be roused, at least not easily. You know, coal was such a big business in America back then. They still have quite a few people going down into mines to dig out the black stuff even now, at least I think so. But the job seems to be more and more obsolete. Or it is more than anyone probably thought it ever would be back when it was a huge driver of the economy in that part of the world. And everybody, I think, in the whole world was using coal as a big part of their energy use, right? Although for that to change so much in about 80 years shouldn't surprise us. Coal isn't just a dirty source of fuel. It's not a renewable resource. You get it out of the ground and that's it. We're always going to have wind. We're always going to have the sun. It's not just cave-ins that kill people or black lung disease. It's just that other energy options make more sense. The times they are a-changin'. I just saw the Bob Dylan movie, yesterday? 2 days ago? A Complete Unknown. It's so hard being a star. I can't do anything else. I didn't like it. It's well made, but, oh my God, Bob Dylan is so full of his own crap. And it's not just that movie that told me that. Although, of course, he's a great songwriter. So the wave of the future has hurt business in Kentucky and the Virginias, West and regular Virginia, which is where the movie was filmed, by the way, along with going to Tennessee for the Grand Ole Opry scenes. And that's a shame for these people when it comes to having a job. And coal's been part of the identity of those communities and those citizens for so long, so I understand that they're disappointed, mad even, that things have gone this way. But there's only so much of it down there anymore. And if mines do continue in one form or another, look out for robotics, look out for AI. Well, maybe not AI for this stuff, but robotics anyway. Whoever owns the mine will probably send a machine down there to do the work instead of a human, if they're not already doing that now. Anyway, back from Mount Tangent, Doolittle makes a bet with a bunch of guys in the crowd that he can get his Jeep to 4x4 its way up a steep hill. After a few, oh no, he's not going to make it moments, he wins the wager, which impresses the girl who hasn't even met him yet. Loretta's maybe not in love just yet, but she must be in like. The Webbs go home to their shack in Butcher Holler, and the kids get to open up some gifts, but Loretta gets an extra present, a relatively nice dress. The boys are jealous, but Ted says that she's getting to be a woman and women need pretty things. The boys and Loretti, the family always calls her Loretti, have to help out with their baby brothers and sisters, so they're equal in that way, but Lo has the kind of singing voice that they don't. Well, a couple of her sisters did too, but we'll get there. That's not why she got this dress. It is because she is the oldest, I think. The oldest, or one of anyway, the oldest girl for sure, and she needs party things. Doo spends time talking to local moonshiner Lee Dollarhide, the William Sanderson character, who tells him he's got 3 choices on the mountain: coal mine, moonshine, or moving on down the line. But Sanderson doesn't get to be a successful moonshiner in this movie for very long because he's shot dead in the next scene. And Doo is one of the ones who has to deal with a man's horse and his dead body, which I guess is shorthand for Mr. Lynn learning a hard lesson after this murder and also hearing it from his judgy father, that maybe running shine won't be his best choice in life. I think the real Doo did run shine at some point, but that's not really portrayed in this movie. Doolittle is the self-appointed auctioneer at a pie auction, and he ponies up $5 for one of Loretta's chocolate pies. Don't forget, this is 1945 money, outbidding a guy who clearly likes Loretta too, and is annoyed because he's probably right that auctioneers shouldn't be bidding on the products. But Doo bought something inedible because she mixed up the salt with the sugar and her pie was filled with the wrong white powder. Apparently this is a real story. Although he barely minds it because he's pretty kooky for Loretta's Fruit Loops. He walks her home and even gets a little kiss. After Doo wins the bet he made with her that he can get his Jeep up the holler, she was certain that he couldn't. Young Miss Webb is obliged to take a ride with him, and she obviously wants to because she comes a-running when he drives up, and they kiss again 'cause they's in love. Ted doesn't like it, though, partly because Doo is 6 years older than Loretti, and even though he seems like he's generally a tender and loving father, he whips her for hanging out with the wild man. But she tells Pops that she loves the guy, and he wants to marry her. He comes calling while the family's having a dance night in their shack, with Mama hoofing to the song that, well, actually, it's the one you hear Neil and Del singing right near the end of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, when they're driving the burned-out Hulk of their rental car and then Michael McKean stops them. It's Blue Moon of Kentucky, Keep On Shining, which Levon Helm didn't come up with. Bill Monroe did, but I guess it is Levon singing. And of course, Levon plays her dad, Ted. Doo has been saving his paychecks. He's been pitching his pennies like a miser, and he wants to marry her tomorrow. She isn't even 14 yet, but okay, Mr. Lynn. Then again, the real Loretta lied about her age, including in her book. I was reading about this. Maybe she did that when her career first started, so she'd seem younger than she really was, so they wouldn't judge her when she got to be 45 or something like that. No, I'm 42 or I'm 38 or something. I'm not the age you think I am. She was still too young to get married at 16 even, and not even old enough to have sex yet, but she was apparently 16 when she became Mrs. Lynn, not 13. Oh, and I love the idea that even if she was 16 at this point, that makes a character played by Tommy Lee Jones in 1980 only 22 years old. He could pass for nearly twice that old. We all love Tommy. I love his Tommy Lee Jones. But he never, ever, even when he was 6 years old, looked like he was barely old enough to drink alcohol. Doo's old-fashioned, plus he knows he has to, so he asks Ted for permission to marry Loretta, but the Tedder passes the buck to his wife, and Clary passes the buck back to her husband. Go ask Clary. Go ask Ted. That's not a very good impression, is it? It's interesting how non-confrontational Ted is through all this, too. You'd expect a guy in this position, who's so against this union, to pull out a shotgun and make Doolittle do leave. But no, he isn't saying yes. But he doesn't really push back all that hard either. Lebo Helm plays a little bit tired, doesn't he? Maybe that's what it is. I'm just too tired to fight this. I'm against it, but I can't be bothered. And Doolittle is so set on marrying their daughter that he barges into their bedroom when they're trying to sleep that night to try one more time to convince them. Ted's conditions are to never hit her and never take her away from home. Well, strike one and strike two are not far off. Remember I talked about De Niro won Best Actor for Raging Bull the same year Spacek won for this performance? Well, here's an interesting comparison to another great movie De Niro made with Scorsese that compares these never hit her, never move her away conditions in this film, and that's in Goodfellas, when De Niro as Jimmy tells the young Henry Hill to never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. Well, Henry ends up doing both and betrays Jimmy in the process. Puts him in jail for many years, I think the rest of his life. So Lo and Doo get married the next day with just a few witnesses there in the church, even though Doo doesn't even have a suit, just a decent buttoned-up shirt, and Loretta doesn't have a wedding dress. Ted shows up right when the preacher man asks who gives this woman, and he says it's him. He doesn't even come into the church, just stands in the entranceway, gives his blessing, and he has a pretty nice suit on, and then turns around and leaves. Their place is freezing cold on their wedding night, which is one reason she puts her nightgown on over her clothes, although I'm sure that's not just because of the cold. She's nervous about the wedding night sex she has to know is ahead for her. She doesn't want to do this bumping, and she begs him not to, but he goes ahead anyway. This is obviously not the easiest scene to watch, considering we'd now call this marital rape. Maybe people would have then, but not that many. Now we'd say that. She says no, she doesn't want it, but he doesn't listen. He feels entitled because they're married. And even if she really was 16, not 13, that doesn't make it right either. Although that was certainly not always the way. Times have changed even just since 1980 when the movie came out. Never mind the mid-40s when this scene was set. I'm not accusing Kentuckians or West Virginians or any of the people from that area of anything in suggesting this, but I wonder if they would agree that what happened here was wrong. They maybe wouldn't. It's not even anything to do with them being so-called hillbillies. Plenty of supposedly cultured people would see this as very normal. You got married, it's your wedding night, you have sex. That's just the way it is. The next morning, he says she has to get used to what happened last night, but she fires back that she won't get used to him getting on her and sweating like a pig, which wins a cuff across the face. So yep, he's already hitting her, not 24 hours after they said the I do's. Although just a little point of order that while her father has every right to expect the Lynn man to treat his daughter right, he did some whooping of his own on her backside when he found out about how Doo was courting her. Do as I say, Doo, not as I do. Doo? Do. Well, anyway, Doo ends up working in a coal mine and he comes home filthy and in a bad mood, but does have a book for Loretta called Sex for Newlyweds. It's helped millions the world over to learn to like the nudie times with your man, but her first and main objection is that she doesn't like how long some of the words are. Sex books and their pesky words, the bane of all sex books. Surprisingly, Loretta's not just timid about having sex with her husband, but she can't cook or clean for him either. I got the feeling her mother would have taught her all of that by now, to not only get her ready for when she does marry somebody, but especially once it becomes clear that Doolittle is going to be that somebody. Crash course at least, Mom. Teach this girl the basics, even if it was just in a couple of days. Plus, the older kids are often watching over the babies and they have school and everything, but Mama never showed any of them how to clean a dish or fry an egg. I would have thought that'd be something they learned when they were 5 or 6 years old. Well, somewhere in here, Loretta says that Dooster sounds like an old bar, which is one of the lines I always remembered in this movie. It's not a big old bear, it's a big old bar. If you heard my episode about The Revenant during Revenge Month, then you heard me referencing this scene when I talked about the old bar attack when Leo gets mauled by a grizzly. It's a big old bar. Even though Loretta gets pregnant, she leaves her man Lynn and goes home to the Webbs, telling her doctor that they're separated. Doo tracks her down, though, and tells her he wants to go out to Washington State for work, not spend his life in a coal mine and turning old at 40, or being old at 40. So he's breaking his second vow to her father to not take her away from there. Although at least when he hears he's going to be a damn paterfamilias, I'm the damn paterfamilias, he's not unhappy at all. He grins, in fact. Maybe he's happy he'll be a dad. Although maybe he's just happy that she'll be trapped in this marriage, whether she likes it or not. More time passes and she's very pregs. Doolittle makes enough money to send for her to come out to Washington, and Daddy mans up again, wearing his suit when he takes her to the train station. Ted laments lamentably, that he's never going to see her again. Okay, he'll see her, but he won't see his little girl again. It's like she's being robbed from him. He don't want to grow up. He's a Loretta Lynn kid. And I think actually in this movie, they don't see each other again before he, spoiler alert, dies. So in the movie sense, he literally doesn't see her again. The next scene is of the woman who's no longer Ted's little girl dealing with 4 young kids of her own. And she's only 19 at this point. One of them gets the "wait till your father gets home" treatment. I don't know about you, but I never heard that line. I don't think I ever did. Maybe I'm just conveniently forgetting. My mother either just dealt with us herself or, well, we were well behaved and didn't really need a lot of talking tos. Maybe my brother more than us, but he was older than us, so I don't remember that so well. I certainly heard that "wait till your father gets home" from my aunt when I'd stay with my cousins, though. I think she said that more often than she breathed. A friend out there on the wash calls Doo Mooney, which is a reference to him coming from moonshine country. Although in the movie, he never does actually run shine, does he? I think he really did, though, in reality. His real first name is Oliver, by the way, but nobody ever calls him that in the movie. Oliver! Exclamation mark. So he's Doo to Loretta, Mooney to these guys. He's got more nicknames than Apollo Creed in Rocky IV. The Master of Disaster, the King of Sting, the Count of Monte Fisto, the one, the only, Apollo Creed. I probably forgot some. Well, in any case, their life seems pretty good, even though she still doesn't have a wedding ring, something she often complains about. And that's what she wants for their anniversary. So off Doo goes to buy one at a pawn shop, only he ends up getting drunk and bringing home a guitar instead. He got her this instead of what she really wanted because he likes the way she sings. And this scene is actually pretty sweet. He's not demanding that she learn the guitar and keep singing. He's just encouraging it. So she does, plucking away and warbling on the porch with their clunky washing machine barely struggling its way through a load. And the kids won't stop their tomfoolery, running around and hollering. She always has to get them to calm down, and her music actually often does the trick. Listen to Mama sing, and they do. It's time to get going with the music part of this musical biopic, so the Lynns leave the kids with a sitter and go to the local honky-tonk, where Doo arranges to get his wife a shot at performing in front of strangers. But she has M&M disease and pukes up Mom's spaghetti in the bathroom. Okay, maybe she's only hiding in the bathroom, not ralphing pasta, but it made me laugh to think that Marshall Mathers was inspired by this scene when he wrote Lose Yourself, because the nervousness in the bathroom part of this is the same as what's in 8 Mile. So we know that she's not really into this, but Doo isn't just encouraging anymore. He orders her to sing, even if he has to force her to, which I know sounds bad, but it is sweet when he says he's proud of her when she sings. So she mounts up. Imagine being among the people who were the first ever to see a major star perform for a crowd. What a special feeling that would be if she had said, "I've never done this before, people," and then you look back and think, "I saw Loretta Lynn when she was a little kid for the first, whatever, maybe, okay, about 20, I guess, 1920, for the first time ever." That would be so cool to be part of that crowd. And she's, of course, a natural, getting a huge ovation when she and the band perform There He Goes. When that's done, they want her to do another one, and we don't see it, but we know she keeps on a-pecking and a-singing. A star might not have been born, but she's emerging. The dudes are emerging. She even writes her first song, "I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl," which she comes up with while gardening with her daughter. Up until now, I guess she's only been doing covers of other people's music. They have 3 boys and 1 girl, by the way, and they look like they're all about the same age, a couple years apart maybe. Well, they have to be a couple years apart, I guess, but I guess they stopped getting busy or started using birth control because they haven't had a new one in quite a while, but stay tuned. Doo arranges to have her record Honky Tonk Girl in a professional booth, which goes so much better after the producer takes it upon himself to get a full band in there, not just a couple of mid-range talents that were in there with her at first. He heard what she could do and thought, let's get some real performers in here with her. Doo decides he'll go full bore in demanding his wife's career. I almost said dude, by the way. The dude abides her career. So he jury-rigs a backdrop and some lighting to snap a promotional picture of Loretta in their living room, and he spends all his free time preparing packages of records, snapshots, and "please listen to this" letters to get her name out there. Promotion can be the hardest part of a creative venture. I know that as well as anyone. I've never been very good at promoting this podcast. I don't want to bother people. They don't care if they don't like classic movies. My friends and family never really cared about what we do because they don't care about the movies. They don't know what we're talking about half the time. But things are put on hold when Ted suddenly dies, and the Lynns go all the way back to the holler for the funeral. I guess my PVR was sad about this development because it started fritzing at this point, freezing scenes then jumping ahead a few seconds. It did a little bit after this sequence, but it was mostly during the funeral stuff. It's almost like it was saying, I feel bad too about poor Ted. Loretta feels guilty that she ever left home and was away from her family for so long, and she seems to be mad at Doo for it. And it is his fault they left, but sometimes marriage takes you to places you didn't intend to go. His job was out west. It was better for him. He didn't want to die a coal miner. And the side benefit of having to deal with Daddy's death back here in Kentucky is that they need to be in that area anyway if she's ever going to make it. Kentucky, Tennessee, and so on are the heart of country music, not Washington State. Going back home to the West Coast is not going to help her career at all. He's arranged for her mother to watch the kids for a while, and Doo will drive her around to every radio station they can find. A local DJ tries to blow them off, or, as our dog would say, he's busy! But she freaks out that he didn't even open up the package Doo sent, so he shuts her up by interviewing her live on the radio, and then plays Honky Tonk Girl for all to hear. You'd never think of it with someone who's normally pretty sweet, but it's fair to say that she bullied her way into this. Loretta Lynn, textbook bully. And then they drive around Kentucky to hawk their platters to every single radio station they can find. Just look for the transmitters, Loretta. Only they're definitely not swimming in cash. They're eating more bologna than she ever thought she would. But she does charm the DJs in the interviews, even if one of the station managers loses his mind after she says horny on the air, because Doo said that bologna makes you horny, and she didn't know what that meant. The two of them didn't even know it, but their single, or her single, I guess, has gone to number 14 across the nation. So one angry station manager saying he'll never play that music again doesn't mean squat. If the song's a huge hit, he'll play it. We get our first earring up of Patsy Cline, who will meet in the form of Beverly D'Angelo soon, when Crazy plays on the radio. How many versions of Crazy have there been over the years? That name of a song, not necessarily the same lyrics. There's her song, but also a tune by Aerosmith, one by Gnarls Barkley, one by Seal, one by Willie Nelson, one by Kenny Rogers. Now, maybe some of those are covers, I don't know, but at least some of them are original. I know that 4 or 5 of those are different songs called Crazy. And that's to say nothing of Crazy on You by Heart, or Crazy for You by Madonna, one of my favorites, or Crazy Train by Ozzy, or Crazy in Love by Beyonce, another one of my favorites. Actually, all those are my favorites, I think. I like all those songs. Those last 4 especially. All the crazies. Anyway, the two of them end up at the mecca of country music, the Grand Ole Opry. Loretta's terrified and she thinks she doesn't belong there, but Doo's right when he says that she belongs there as much as anybody else does. Ted had told Loretta before they got married that Doo was a partier and a lover of the ladies, so I liked in this scene that he was far more interested in hearing his wife sing at the Opry than in making nice with one of the wives of one of the singers who seems interested in him. You'd think a man who was once a big-time fornicator would take advantage of the opportunities he has like this, but a fellow husband of a lady singer taunts him about how that's all he is, the husband of a meal ticket, which leads them to getting into a fight. But all he wanted to do was hear his wife perform, sing, and play guitar. Meanwhile, Loretta's thrilled with how it went and says she could die happy. But stuff that silliness in a sack, mister. Stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. They want her to come back next week, and she ain't got nothing else planned, so she gets to do the Opry then, and then over and over, week after week. This part of her story happened around 1960 or 61, by the way, so she was right around 30 years old. It's not always easy to know what year we're in with this movie, because she started, 17 years before this, supposedly, or maybe it was actually 14. But now she's twice as old as she was when the story began, around twice as old at least, even if she was 16. She does a cover of Patsy's I Fall to Pieces. I fall to pieces. Where we see that the crowds, even just in the area of the Opry, are growing. Never mind when she plays at the Opry itself. Patsy hears this new phenom on the radio and wants to meet her, even though the Kleinster was in a bad car accident and she's laid up in the hospital. She's got 2 black eyes and a huge bandage on her booper. Loretta's a little starstruck, but she and the P are like Bev and a dog. They're friends immediately. The L and the P. When Loretta and Doo are out for drinks, though, with Patsy and her husband, Charlie, Patsy teases her man about how he's just a tax deduction. Though Loretta has the verve to say to Doo, that goes for you, too. But she's tweaking a nerve here with this verve. We already know that he resents exactly this, someone suggesting he's a hanger-on, partly because he knows that he busted ass to get her where she is. Her talent is keeping her in Nashville, but he did a lot to help her get there. We get another song in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where the 2 ladies duet on Back in Baby's Arms. That's the tune in the Those Aren't Pillows scene in Planes, Trains. Why'd you kiss my ear? Where's your other hand? Between 2 pillows, ah! I guess John Hughes was a bit of a country fan. Dug some Patsy Cline. It's raining hard during this concert, but they sing on. Doesn't anybody worry about the electronics shorting out? Or couldn't all that water pouring down electrocute somebody? I don't know, am I wrong about that? The water's just beating down, they got umbrellas over their heads, but what about the equipment? But they survive just fine while Doo is off getting right drunk, playing carnival games, and ending up in another woman's arms. She's back, or he's back in baby's arms. Not even his baby. He's mad that she's wearing makeup now, which he said a while back that he doesn't like on her at all. I hate it. But what's bothering him far more is that he's depressed at his role in her career and in her life. She doesn't need him anymore. She's not treating him like that, but it's just become true. And if it wasn't, enough people goad him about it that he's making it true in his own mind. When he freaks out about the makeup again and that she went shopping with Patsy, he face smacks her again, and yet this time she fights back. Patsy makes Charlie drive off and leave Doo behind to deal with his broken pinky finger, which got that way when Loretta swung her purse at him to defend herself. Later that night he comes back to her and confesses he needs to get a regular job, and he admits that getting her there is one thing, being there is another. But the humbled man does something really right by finally giving her a wedding ring. Maybe it helps that he's sober, or he seems like he is at least. Meantime, Loretta tells Patsy that she's pregnant again. Doo doesn't even know about it yet, but she doesn't even want it anyway. Patsy's excited, though, and hands out all sorts of clothes her best buddy can wear once she starts to grow and show. Maybe this was an invention in Loretta's book or the movie. She really does put Patsy on a hell of a pedestal because she's practically perfect in every way. But she, in the movie at least, is a tremendous friend. But Apted lingers on a "bye, see you soon" shot of D'Angelo waving goodbye to her friend, and that's it for her during this movie and in Loretta's life. The Lynns wake up one day to find out she died, like Ritchie Valens, Buddy Holly, and the Big Bopper did, in a plane crash. And just like the Valenzuela family find out on the radio in that movie, that's how she and Doolittle get the news. I heard that wasn't actually true, but in the movie, that's what happens. This was on March 5th, 1963, by the way, and Patsy was only 30. Loretta does go through with the pregnancy and ends up having twins. She even names one of them Patsy, then lets her man know right on the birthing bed that she's determined to get back on stage ASAP. We were due for a musical montage, and here we have one, as she keeps on writing and recording songs and having to deal with her excited fans following her around and snapping pictures and really always getting in her face. They pull off her hair at one point. She loses some hair. One of them just grabs at it. We get to hear some of her other hits in the soundtrack as she tours around, and this is while Doo gets to play Super Dad at home with the twins. He seems way happier doing this. I guess the other four kids just grew up and they're off on their own now. Do we ever see them again after whatever that last scene was with them? We get a lot of scenes with the twins, but not them anymore. But their dad seems to be content, dealing with them, of course, being a rancher and a farmer and also working as a mechanic. But while he's happier now, Loretta's stressed out on the road and taking pills for her never-ending headaches. The never-ending headaches. Oh. Things are going great financially, but they spend a lot of time apart, and she doesn't see her kids very often. So she asks him to join her on the road, even though, as he says, she's got people fighting to take care of her. But she needs somebody who actually cares about Loretta, not the country music superstar. She needs her man. Jones gets to play a nice scene when Doo takes a phone call from a superfan. He's annoyed at first because it's 1 a.m., then he actually has a nice conversation with her, realizing that this lady is lonely that late at night, just like he often is. But we're back on stage, and Loretta, who does have Doolittle on the tour, on the tour with her as she asked, keeps on crooning those hits. Yet she starts to lose it, forgetting the lyrics to a song she's probably sung hundreds of times. The guitarists try to coax her through it by feeding her the lyrics, then they try another song to no avail, but she ain't right. And I guess she left the concert early because she wasn't able to perform. At another show, Doo tells her that 10,000 people are waiting for her, but she tells him that she just can't do it. He doesn't want to let her off the hook, though. She needs to get out there and sing for the folks. And she does get to the stage, being introduced, as she always is now, as the First Lady of Country Music, Miss Loretta Lynn. But it isn't long before she stops the show and tells the fans that they wouldn't be there if they didn't care about her, but things are moving too fast. She went from being a kid, to being married, to having babies, to singing for y'all. Patsy told her she needed to run her own life, but her life is running her, and she nearly collapses as she leaves the stage, falling into Doo's arms just as he grabs her and hustles her out of there. And if you've seen Nashville, you should see Nashville, one of the great movies, Ronnie Blakely's character, think back if you've seen the movie, Barbara Jean, is so much like this. The family stuff and having some mental issues and stress and whatnot. It's just her ending is a lot worse than what happens to Loretta Lynn in real life or, of course, in this movie. The Lynns go back to their Hurricane Mills Ranch so she can get some very deserved R&R, which I guess ended up lasting a full year. Doo announces he's building them a house that will have a great view of the woods, reminding her of her home back in Kentucky. That's his point. But she's mad because he didn't even ask her about building a new house. His response to that is to threaten divorce because he's tired of her BS. But all she really wants is for him to put the bedroom in the back of the house, not in the front. And then all is well. This isn't a perfect marriage, but it does seem to work for them. They have a fight and it's resolved by the end of the day, or in this case, in seconds. The movie ends with her looking healthy with her big ol' har, back on stage singing the title tune, an autobiographical song in this autobiographical movie. It's a good song. I think we all know it, right? Coalminer'sdaughter. Doo seems to love it, with her crooning in very literal fashion and literally explaining how her life went back in Butcher Holler with her mama and daddy and the other kids. She belts this out with as much passion as she does any other ditty in the whole flick. I guess Apted listened to Vanessa Williams and saved the best for last. I should mention that the end credits confirm that all songs were sung by Sissy Spacek and Beverly D'Angelo. And that's impressive that they were able to sound this much like the people they're playing. I don't know the two country stars that well, but I didn't know it wasn't them until I think I'd heard that before. I've seen the movie several times, but I haven't seen it in a long time. So it reminded me that that's actually them every time. It's never once the real people. And ironically, Sissy told the filmmakers that if they cast her in this, instead of, say, Meryl Streep, then she wanted to do her own singing. Meryl wanted this part, apparently. She thought they wouldn't cast her if that was the condition. And she was trying to dodge having to do this part in the first place. I think she was a little bit scared about playing a real-life person who was still alive. I guess she didn't know how to say no, even though at that point in her career she probably could have. She did carry by this point, for one thing. But they bit on that, and the real Loretta's persuasiveness had something to do with it. She wanted her screen avatar to be this actress. So this is a pretty good biopic about hardworking people, salt of the earth as it were. Yeah, they get wealthy, but they're still regular people mostly. And of course, her life before that was very regular. In fact, it's one of the better movies about a singer anyone had made up until that point. Although I'd say that Ray and Walk the Line are probably even better. They came out in 2004 and 2005. But the actors in this are all good to great, and Sissy deserved that Oscar. D'Angelo also makes a hell of a splash in what turns out to be not that much more than an extended cameo. She's in the movie for maybe 30 minutes, probably less. But don't sleep on Tommy Lee Jones. He nails it as Doo. If they had nominated him for an Oscar too, I wouldn't have objected. Jones is not one of the 15 or 20 greatest thespians of all time. Not to me, maybe to his fans. I guess they probably would think that. But you at least know you're going to get believability out of him in every role. Okay, not as Two-Face in Batman Forever. He's terrible on that. But otherwise, Tommy was nothing, and there has been nothing in his career. He's still working, if not authentic. As for the marriage of the Lynns, well, he's abusive. You can't deny that. He learns something, though, after she breaks his finger with her purse. He's a far nicer guy that night, buying her a wedding ring and admitting that he needs to have his own life. I think he gets calm. It's almost like, I finally realize it, and I can be calmer. Not that he's perfect, but he's better after that. When he finds his place in the world, he can be a better man. And Apted shows him being a pretty great dad to the twins. Unless Apted softened the real story, there's some kind of redemption in how he treats her in the last 30 minutes or so. A lot of what he does and says to her ages badly. What doesn't in old movies? But at least they didn't end up divorced. He became some kind of kinder, gentler man. So the cast. I said it before in this review, but Sissy Spacek has been in 3 films that we've covered. Badlands, Carrie, and The Straight Story. This was her second of 6 Oscar nominations, all in a leading role. A lot of actors have plenty of nominations, but they have 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, in supporting roles, which is fine, but these are all leading roles for her that got her nominations. Most of those noms were bunched together in the 80s. She was up for Carrie in 76, because that was the 70s, obviously. Then won for this in 1980, then was nominated in 1982, 85, and 86 for Missing, The River, and Crimes of the Heart. But she could have easily won award number 2 in 2001 when she was nominated for In the Bedroom. It's great work, but they went with Halle Berry in Monsters Ball. That was a good fivesome, as I recall, too. Nicole Kidman and Zellweger were up for their movies that year. Good group. Did you notice that she never swears in this movie? I guess maybe Loretta doesn't at all then. Not that this film is filled with actual F-bomb cursings, but just what everybody else exercises some kind of potty mouth at one time or another. And I guess she pulled a Day-Lewis and didn't drop the character, even when they weren't shooting. She talked and tried to behave like her friend Loretta throughout the production. Spacek was not that much younger than the actors who played her parents in this, which isn't very unusual for a movie. One of the craziest examples, of all that is in North by Northwest, where Cary Grant was actually older than the actress who plays his mother by maybe 2-3 years. Jessie Royce Landis, I believe was her name. Sissy was about 30 during the production, yet convincingly plays a very young teenager for the first quarter of the film, just like she sold that she was a 16-year-old, a pathetic 16-year-old, in Carrie a few years earlier. And if I ever heard that the Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue singer, Crystal Gale, was Loretta's sister, I forgot about that. She was, though. Her birth name was actually Brenda Webb. Loretta was about 19 when Crystal was born, so she was long gone from Butcher Holler when Miss Gale even came into the world, never mind starting her own singing career. And get this, the singer Peggy Sue was also their sister, and I think I read something about how one of their brothers got into the music business too. The Webbs were born to sing. The Holler water was good on their vocal cords. Tommy Lee Jones has come up 4 previous times in this podcast, in Love Story, that wasn't that long ago, a couple months ago, in The Fugitive, in Men in Black, and in No Country for Old Men. He was also in Cobb, which Chris and I reviewed on our sports movie podcast that we don't do anymore, Scoring at the Movies. Jones has strawberry blonde hair in this, or I read it was orange. I saw strawberry blonde. So I assume the real Doo did too. There's blonde hair on this big old bar. Tommy also has eyebrows that make him look a little like one of the stages of the Hulk makeup in the Incredible Hulk TV show. When you see him going from the Hulk down to Banner again, they show stages of that. He looks a little like him a few times. That wasn't so flattering. And I read that Jones's future fugitive castmate, Harrison Ford, was originally going to play Doo. Well, as great as Ford was then, and always has been, they got the right man to play Oliver Lynn. Ford would have been good, but I think Jones was probably a better piece of casting there. Beverly D'Angelo's had a long career. She was Ed Norton's mother in American History X, for example, and has done plenty of other things, but she's best known, maybe for this, but really for playing Chevy Chase's wife in the Vacation movies, including the reboot cool they did a few years ago. She and Chevy played Ed Helms' parents because he's the grown-up Rusty, so they still played, what are their names again? Clark and Ellen, that's it. We covered Christmas Vacation several years ago, and we reviewed Annie Hall, too, many years ago, where Bevy D had a very small role. Sissy Spacek was able to meet and get to know Loretta very well, but since Patsy Cline had been dead for so long, D'Angelo didn't have that opportunity. The lovely and likable Alicia Malone was the host on TCM, the show they interviewed before the movie played, and then afterwards she and some guy, I didn't write his name down, but that's how I saw the movie, by the way. It was on TCM. I recorded it. I have the DVD, but I recorded it on TCM. And she had a guest on, the guy, I didn't know his name. They both raved about how Patsy Cline's voice is not easy to replicate. So even bigger kudos were due to Bev for nailing it as well as she did. I said cameo. It's not really a cameo. It's just that she's not in the movie that long. I thought she was in the movie more than she is. Bob Hanna plays Patsy's husband, Charlie Dick. The Bobber was in Driving Miss Daisy, which we've covered, but also another movie about cars, Six Pack, which Chris and I reviewed on Scoring at the Movies some years ago. Levon Helm made his acting debut in this film, then went on to act in about a dozen other flicks. 2 of those were The Right Stuff and Tommy Lee Jones' great modern western he starred in it. The 3 Burials of Melquiades Estrada. But Levon was best known as the drummer and the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, The Band. I mentioned about how The Last Waltz went into the National Film Registry in 2019, along with this movie. Well, Levon was in both of those. That had to be a pressure-filled situation for Spacek, by the way, making this movie, to sing and to do it around a guy who was famous for being a singer in an uber-famous band. He also apparently looked a lot like the real Ted Webb, when he had his makeup on at least, so much so that it floored Loretta when she saw him in his movie makeup. Daddy lived again. Phyllis Boyens plays Clary, Loretta's mama. She only acted one other time in a TV movie called The Dollmaker that she made with Jane Fonda and Levon Helm. William Sanderson is barely in this at all, but the man who played Larry on Newhart was in one AFI movie and one of the most influential motion pictures of all time, Blade Runner. It's my other brother Daryl. He was also, curiously enough, in 2 versions of a movie called Last Man Standing, one of which was the Bruce Willis one in the 90s. Their director was Michael Apted. He's probably best known for the Up series that ran on television in England. Presumably the studio wanted to see the documentary style in Coal Miner's Daughter that he brought to that series, and they got it. Beating Rick Linklater to the punch, what they did in Up was to film the same people every 7 years to see where their lives had taken them. And that project has been going on for nearly 60 years. Although Apted died more than 4 years ago, so I don't know if they'll continue doing it. I think the next one would be due in 2026, so I don't know. I didn't look ahead to see if they've actually worked on that. Did another one. Maybe somebody took it over. Maybe they will take it over. Apted also made Gorillas in the Mist with Sigourney Weaver. She got nominated for that. And even directed a Bond movie, The World's Not Enough, and one of the Narnia flicks, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Plus he directed Jodie Foster to an Oscar nomination in Nell, Swine in the Brace. And I said earlier that he worked with Val Kilmer in Thunderheart. And this is the first time we've reviewed something he's directed, or did direct. The writer was Thomas Rickman, adapting the 1976 Loretta Lynn George Vecsey, or Vesey, Vecsey, autobiography. Rickman only wrote 8 other big screen movies. One of those was the Burt Reynolds stuntman flick Hooper, but he also typed out the Dennis Quaid picture, Everybody's All-American. Although I suppose Rickman's maybe biggest title, possibly even including this, is adapting the beloved Mitch Albom book, Tuesdays with Morrie, which was turned into a TV movie with Jack Lemmon and Hank Azaria. Bernard Schwartz produced the flick and was up for an Oscar for it. He was an executive producer on the underrated Psycho 2, a movie we reviewed a few Octobers ago. Also, fun fact, Bernard Schwartz was Tony Curtis's real name. Cinematographer Ralph D. Bode, or Bode, I don't know, B-O-D-E, joined Rickman and Schwartz by being up for an Oscar. He had shot another famous music film, Saturday Night Fever, a few years before this, then worked on Dressed to Kill with De Palma the same year as this. The Accused and, Jodie Foster, and Uncle Buck with John Candy were in his future. That's a curious resume with genres that are all over the place. And we, by the way, have covered Saturday Night Fever. Arthur Schmidt was also nominated for this, but he went on to win gold for his editing of both Who Framed Roger Rabbit and then Forrest Gump. In fact, he was Zemeckis' regular editor up until Castaway. So the Back to the Future trilogy is, of course, part of his filmography, and we covered the first one. We've covered Forrest Gump, Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future, Castaway as well. There's no official composer listed on the IMDb, but Owen Bradley was the music supervisor. So much of the tunage, not all of it, but most of it, is, of course, Loretta Lynn and Patsy Cline songs. Bradley, Spacek, D'Angelo, and the collaborators involved with them were responsible for a very successful soundtrack. It wasn't as huge as Saturday Night Fever or Grease had been a few years before this, but it ended up being a gold record. Speaking of the music, country's never been my favorite, especially this old-timey, twangy stuff. I've always called it Merle music, as in Merle Haggard, but you can't deny that Patsy could belt and Loretta could too. Plus, many of their songs have remained uber famous. You at least have to respect what they accomplished, even if it's not your bag. Still, give me Shania Twain, Faith Hill type modern country. Maybe it's not modern anymore, but in the mid-90s it was modern. I like that stuff, and I still enjoy hearing it on my phone from time to time. Just not every fourth song from Shania Twain. Is it because I'm Canadian that I get the Canadian bands and artists so often from Spotify? I like her. I like Amanda Marshall and The Hip. But God, ease up a little bit. Well, as for some parting thoughts, I guess my biggest complaint is I didn't feel completely wrapped up in this one. I liked it plenty, but wasn't enraptured like it was by The Guns of Navarone, for example, which I reviewed not that long ago and really got wrapped up in that. Now, I ranked Coal Miner's Daughter 5th on my 1980 top 10 list, so I obviously liked it when I came up with those rankings many years ago, and I still do. It's just more of an admiration for what Apted and his team did, rather than telling you right now, if you haven't seen Coal Miner's Daughter, you just have to, because I can't quite say that. And I guess that's partly because of something that this film can't control, which is that it's a well-worn topic, these musical biopics, especially about, in any way, troubled people. No drug addiction here, but she didn't have the perfect life, by any means. Who does? Many other musical icons have had movies made about them in the past 45 years. We've had biopics about Ray Charles, Johnny Cash, Tina Turner, Freddie Mercury, Billie Holiday, Elton John, more than one about Bob Dylan. God, Hollywood and Bob Dylan, what is it? More than one about Elvis. Plus there's been excellent ones about Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, NWA, and The Doors. Even films about Mozart and Beethoven were made in the next decade or so after this came out. And while the ones about Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin, and Amy Winehouse weren't nearly as good as some of those, they've also been in movie theaters since Coal Miner's Daughter was released. So if I saw this fresh in 1980 before any of those had been made, I'd probably be saying, like Gene Siskel I guess did, that this is one of the very best music bios ever. At this point, it's just that there's been such a flood of things that you lose this one a little bit in the shuffle. But it is good. I do recommend it, just maybe not as highly as I would have if I first saw it. I've said this enough. Why am I rambling? It's the last Friday show for a long time. Get out of here. So that was how I saw Coal Miner's Daughter. She was proud to be. I'll be doing the old promoting and publicizing thing in a few minutes. Publicizing. But if you're a trivia fan, you're in luck, because here comes 3 trivia questions all about motion pictures. There's not really a theme this time, just random questions. So number 1, which 2 actors play the parents in Wonder, the 2017 film about a little boy with very serious facial deformities? Question number 2, name the 1996 sequel to Terms of Endearment. And question number 3, Jack Nicholson is presented the Best Picture Award at the Oscars more often than anyone in history, including presenting with other people like Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton. I think it's 8 times. So which woman has presented the Oscar for Best Picture the most often? Okay, we'll get to those answers in a minute or so, but first let me let you know that we do have a podcast about Born Yesterday coming up on Monday. Bev will be away for that one too, although she'll be back on the mic on June 23rd when the order of the day will be to figure out the goods and the bads in Erin Brockovich, and she's off just because it's her usual Monday off once a month when I do Born Yesterday. So we got Oscar winners in this movie, Born Yesterday, and in Erin Brockovich on the 23rd. And just to let you know one more time, this will be my last Friday show for a few months. Barring an unexpected surprise, and I probably won't promote it if it happens, just post it, all you'll find on this podcast until September will be Monday shows. I want some time off this summer. Did you like what I had to say today? Comment on the show by writing a review in your podcast app. Rate us too and subscribe, so you'll find the new app on your device whenever we post one. Just be there for you magically. It's magic. Movie magic. No, it's just... How does that work, Ryan? Explain. I don't know. We put the same show on YouTube too. Search for @HYES Ellis in the space on YouTube. Of course, you can comment and like and all that on the tube as well. We use social media because who doesn't? I'm Ryan Ellis on Blue Sky and @MovieFiend51 on Twix, while Bev is @BevEllisEllis on Twix and just Bev Ellis Ellis, no @ on Blue Sky. Email's good too. We're haveyoueverSeenPodcast@gmail.com. And invest some time and some money too in Sparkplug Coffee. Your next order will get you a one-time 20% discount. You have to use our HYES promo code to be able to take advantage of that. The website is sparkplug.coffee/HYES. Before I bid adieu today, I'll reveal those trivia answers. Question number 1. Which two actors play the parents in Wonder, the 2017 film about a little boy with very serious facial deformities? Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts, who just so happens to be the star of our June 23rd podcast, Aaron Brockovich. We haven't reviewed very many Julia flicks before, but we will in a week and a half. Question number 2. Name the 1996 sequel to Terms of Endearment. It's the not-so-memorable The Evening Star, which it doesn't sound like Jim Brooks, the guy who wrote, directed, and produced Terms, had anything to do with. Oh, and it's also the rare sequel Jack Nicholson has ever appeared in. He's barely in it, but he is in it. Question number 3, of course, is about Jack. Mr. Nicholson has presented the Best Picture award at the Oscars more than anyone in history. Did it with Warren Beatty once, or maybe twice, Diane Keaton once, and Michelle Obama that one time. They co-presented in a way. So I think it's 8 times for him in total. Which woman has presented the Oscar for Best Picture the most often? Audrey Hepburn did it 4 times. So that's the end of the line for Coal Miner's Daughter. I have to get on down the line now. No coal mine, no moonshine. Thanks for being part of this one. Join me on Monday when I speak on my own about Born Yesterday. Meanwhile, I'm going to climb into my hammock. It's about time. I've been talking about it for weeks and months. Hammock time. Or maybe I'll do that another day and just head down to the beach right now. It's only about 10 minutes away. Because the summer is here, baby. And cut.